Surf Splendor.
Well, you know, the first thing we got was a 𝐒𝐿 cash register that had a tape in it. And it wasn't sophisticated like it is now, you know, with a number and everything on every item of clothing. So you'd ring up, 1 was corduroy shorts, 2 was a pair of trunks, 3 was a t-shirt or whatever it was. So there was a gradual improvement in the way you could monitor what you were selling by this tape, and you could do a printout. It was the forerunner of a computer. So I'd get at the end of the month, okay, we sold 500 pair of trunks and 200 shorts, and at least it gave me some indication. And I'm on the floor all the time, so I'm watching this too. You couldn't be sitting like they do now in an office and reading a printout. The printouts weren't detailed enough.
Right.
It told you trunks, but it didn't tell you the size or the color or any of the other stuff.
But it also, you could only be in one location. If you have a bunch of different locations, I'm sure
you had to have each one have that thing. So no, it was a hassle, and that's why we'd have an end of summer sale, and you'd get out of whack. And so at the end of September, when the weather's changing, you got to start buying fall stuff. And so we'd have a big blowout sale, and it wasn't easy, but you had to know what you were doing. You had to be there. You couldn't.
Of course.
You couldn't be. So I was in the stores every day, but to me, I was barefooted. I was in a pair of shorts. I was in a t-shirt. And then I could go to the beach and go get 2 hours of surfing in.
That's the only way to manage it then, because I'm feeling anxiety right now just talking about it. Like overwhelmed by the amount of responsibility, and the finances are what overwhelm me, because especially if you're experiencing all this growth, you want to be able to capitalize on it, of course, if you're going to double your business next year. But that also means taking on
double your cash invested,
which is so scary, because what if business doesn't double next year?
Well, that's right. And that's why I was so concerned. And this shows your point exactly. So over a period of time, after 40 years of doing this, I sold the Hobie stores. And the first time I sold them to a group of guys that I knew, 3 or 4 smart guys. They didn't put up all the money. Whatever the number was, I can't even remember what I sold them for, but they put a down payment. And I had a buying office in Maui and a buying office in California. And right away, they looked at the costs of expenses during the year and showed a couple of buyers in Maui and the building and the rent and all the stuff, and here in California. So they got rid of the buying office in Maui and added a couple buyers here in California and bought it all in California. And they went broke in I don't know how long it took them, but what they didn't realize was that the size scale in Hawaii, you got skinny little Chinese kids and great big Samoans, and where the size scale here it would be maybe 2, 4, 4, 2, over there it would be 3, 1, 4, 4. Something, and the color scales. So here, blue, everybody wanted blue here. Over in Hawaii, they want yellow and orange and green and all the other colors. So they didn't get that. And so I ended up taking the stores back because they couldn't pay me the monthly payment they were supposed to make. I took them back, and it was easy for me to see what they had done wrong, and I could go blow out and bring stuff from over here. They had too much stuff here, and take it over there and get rid of it. And so I got it back in whack. I sold the stores 4 times.
No way.
And I got them back 4 times. Well, I actually sold them 5 times. The 5th time, I wouldn't take them back.
And the 5th time, were they successful with it?
Yeah. Well, the 5th time, Mark Christie. So what happened after the 4th time? I sold Hawaii as a separate entity, and California as a separate entity. So it was obvious that guys that didn't live in Hawaii didn't get the Hawaii. I mean, I lived there for 30 years, and it makes a difference when you see what they're wearing. You're waiting on the customer. Triple XL in Hawaii is not a big deal. In California, you can't give a triple XL away,
So you sold it 5 times, but With each sale, obviously if you're going to sell a profitable asset and then take it back as a distressed asset, that seems like a good financial move. But if there's a certain amount of work that you have to do to bring that distressed asset back up to profitable, then maybe it isn't worth it if you have to invest a bunch of time and money. But were each of those transactions beneficial for you, or were you doing it more to preserve the legacy of the brand?
Well, it was all of the above, but what I figured out, I could make more money taking them back than I could actually running them for a short period of time, because I knew how to get rid of that stuff. They didn't have the connections, so I turned 8 of the stores into ski stores here in California, not in Hawaii. And so the ski business at the beach can be kind of unpredictable weather-wise and stuff. But because I've skied all my life and I tended bar in Aspen and Sun Valley, I knew all the ski shops. So I could blow out the ski stuff. And I don't mean skis per se, but Patagonia, light after ski stuff, you could wear it here as well as there. But I could blow that out really quick. So as soon as I came in, computers were starting to come in there. I'd get it all on a computer, show what I had. Boom, I got rid of it. And so I made money on all that.
Did the ski stores have one name, or were they all separate names?
No, they were all Hobies. So
they're all Hobie Ski.
Well, it was just Hobie Sports.
Hobie Sport. Okay.
So Corona del Mar, Laguna, Dana Point, Santa Monica, those were Hobie Sports. Now they've turned them back to Hobie Surfboards.
Gotcha.
But they were just Hobie Sports because we covered more than just surfing.
Gotcha. At what point did you get into real estate?
Well, that's another, I never had any money because, it wasn't like I was making money, but it kept going back into the business because we had to buy more inventory, remodel a new store and all that. So I never had any extra cash, but because I skied and surfed in neat towns, Honolulu, Maui, Lahaina, Aspen, Sun Valley, Laguna, I could never buy a house, but what I bought is vacant lots. And so in Aspen, you could buy a vacant lot for 10 grand, put $1,000 down and pay it over a couple of years. And, then the land prices went up and the lot's worth 50 grand instead of 10. So I started doing that.
But what was the idea behind buying a vacant lot? Why would you want a vacant lot?
Well, because I wanted to I really liked the mountains and I was skiing every winter. And I'd go from Hawaii to Aspen and ski for a month or 2 weeks, come back and go back again. So I just liked the mountain atmosphere and culture was very similar to the beach guys. I mean, you got a lot of surfers that, in the wintertime, it's windier, the water's colder, the wetsuits weren't as good as they are now. So, friends of mine that went skiing before I did come back and say, God, just like skiing, I like surfing, only you got to bundle up. We went up and wore 2 pair of Levi's and 3 sweatshirts, just tried to stay warm. But I liked the atmosphere. And in those days, the mountain towns closed in the summer. They were only ski towns. And so when the ski lifts stopped, everybody would go to the beach. And actually, I've got a magazine article a guy just gave me about that. I'll show it to you. Just sent it to me. But so I'd buy a lot, and they seem to go up every year. And so I'd trade them, and it was just a form of starting to make stuff. And so in Sun Valley, the first one I bought there with a partner named Ron Sharp. He's been my real estate partner for 55 years, and he was a realtor from Newport Beach, moved to Sun Valley, and he said, God, there's this little house you can buy for $3,000 down, and the rent will more than pay for the monthly payments. And I said, I don't have $3,000, but I said, Ron, I got $1,500 if you'll put up $1,500. So we bought it together. I said, I live in Honolulu. Don't call me. Do whatever you want. You want to trade it, sell it, fine with me. You don't even need to waste time on a phone call. So he traded that house for another house. And then the funny thing, we traded it for a bunch of little cabins called Lefty's Cabins. And we sent me an article out of the Sun Valley Times, big drug raid at Lefty's Cabins. The owner, Dick Metz, lives in Honolulu, and I called up Ron. I said, sell that thing right away. I don't want my name in the paper about a big drug bust. So we sold that, and he bought a motel with that money, and we formed a little company called M&S, Metz and Sharp. And so over the years, we never put up any more money than the $1,500 over the next, I'm going to say 10 years. And then he wanted to trade the motel for an industrial little building. And then we had to have cash. So he said, I know a guy that lives in Seattle that's got some money, and his name is Nick Madonna. And so we'll take him as a partner, and we'll go from a half to a third, but he puts up all the cash. So now I own a third, but I own a third of something way bigger. And so Nick's been our partner, the three of us, MM&S now, Madonna, Metz, and Sharp. And so then we bought a ranch in Park City, 27 acres, and developed all of that. And then we got the Wolf brothers on that. So now my ownership went from half to third. So now it's about 20% or maybe 15%. But we own a big storage unit, several office buildings, commercial buildings. And so it just this is over the, we're talking about 30 years.
When you started off the first purchase wanting to be hands-off completely, have you remained hands-off?
No, I got more involved.
You have, okay.
Well, over a period of time, then we did have to go borrow some money. And I didn't want to give up any more because I saw the results of this. So once I had to sign on the loan, I took a way more active part in it. And Ron and I are still partners in the stuff at Park City and Sun Valley.
Did you ever own any of the retail properties?
Well, that was another thing I did. So, as you might know, the first Hobie shop in Laguna was in the middle of the block where Glen Eyrie runs into Forest Avenue. And a guy, what was his name? Laguna guy. I used to dicker with him all the time. And I said, you got to sell me this building. And he said, oh, Dick, he said, you're a great tenant. That's a perfect location for you. You can stay there forever. And I said, no, I got to own the building. And I said, if you don't, I'm going to go somewhere else. Oh, he said, you'll never move. This is too good. Well, I checked. So I went to work and I found 5 buildings in Laguna that looked like they were not going to keep the same owners for long, and that were good locations. So I found out who they were. And so the location on the corner where Hobie Star is now, that guy died, and he donated it to the Laguna Hospital. Well, I knew right away the hospital didn't want a retail building. So I went to the hospital the next day and told them I'd buy it from them. So I bought the building from the hospital that I wanted in the first place.
Unbelievable. I mean, probably helps that you're from Laguna. You probably had connections.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know people. And
yeah.
So
okay,
that's
a great space.
Yeah. So those are all, it just kind of, and admittedly, the economy, all this stuff was going up. So it was a good economic time. So there was a lot of luck involved. It wasn't like I was some kind of a genius or something, but it was obvious that you'd be better off owning.
Yeah. Well, so you've explained some of that growth, and you've said that you learned along the way from your mistakes. Were there ever any major mishaps or major mistakes?
No, not that we went broke. We lost some money on a couple of deals, but not very much. So we sold them and moved on. And it was like the Hobie glider. That was catering to a different kind of a person. A model guy is a different kind of a dude. He's not a surfer or skier. And I said to Hobie, we ought to sell this. This isn't our kind of ballywick.
Right.
And so that was one case. It was making money, not a lot, but we didn't know all the ins and outs. We didn't want to be a model company. It was too far away from I thought we ought to stay with our expertise and do what we knew best. I mean, we're both surfing, we're on the beach, we're sailing, we're doing all that stuff. We know what works and what doesn't. And you got good input from all your friends that are doing the same thing as they kind of followed whatever. Hobie would go build something. He'd teach me how to sail or fly a model airplane. And then I'd get all my friends and, it just kind of mushroomed.
Could you imagine your life if you'd never met Hobie?
Well,
he's so integral.
I made a talk at his funeral, and I was tending bar at. I knew Hobie. See, I went to Chaffee. Hobie grew up in Ontario. He went to Chaffee High School, and when I grew up in Laguna, there was no Orange Coast, and Chaffee College came down here for Easter week, and there was a lot of good-looking Chaffee girls that were down here that we kind of got to know because it wasn't too far away. So a bunch of us at Laguna High School went to Chaffee Junior College right out of high school. And so in those days, the football field and the gym, the high school and the college used the same ones. They had different buildings for classes, so I played football and ran track, and Hobie was a freshman in high school when I was a freshman in college. I'm 5 years older than Hobie was. And so I met him then, and his best friend had a brother that was my best friend in college. So they lived right next door to each other. So I knew Hobie when he was a junior and a freshman in high school. And then I'm living on Brook Street, and Hobie's dad bought a summer home on Oak Street, 1 block away. And so I'm on the beach every day, or part of the time anyway. And one day Hobie showed up on the beach, said, "You guys are surfing? What's that all about?" And Walter Hoffman actually showed Hobie how to make a surfboard. And so Hobie went up and bought the balsa wood and made a board for himself in his garage. But Hobie was really good with making stuff. He just had that ability. And he didn't like that board, sold it to a neighbor, and I have that first board in the museum.
Oh, wow.
But it's been cut up, and it's not very good, but at least it was the first one.
The other figure I wanted to ask you about, because you knew him personally, was just Rabbit Kekai.
Sure.
What was your connection, and can you explain who he is?
Absolutely. Great guy. He was a bit of a BSer, but that was typical of all of us on the beach, I think, at the time. Rabbit Kekai was a really good athlete, good water guy, which so many people in Hawaii, they grow up on the beach, Steamboat and Buddy Choi. I mean, I could just name dozens of them. Wada, Taylor, those are all guys that I grew up with on the Hobie team. But Rabbit was special. He was a good-looking guy. He was a good surfer. He paddled. He did all the stuff on the beach, made his life as a beach boy. And he married 𝐶𝐞𝐤. She was the best women athlete in Honolulu. And they were a natural couple just because everybody thought, God, they're both great athletes. They're going to have the best babies in the world. And they did get married. They had 2 daughters, and they're really neat daughters, but they weren't athletic. The genes, who knows about that stuff? Yeah. But they had 2 great daughters, and Dave Rockland, when he married 𝐶𝐞𝐤, adopted Rabbit's 2 daughters. And he actually raised Rabbit's 2 daughters with 𝐶𝐞𝐤, and then they had 3 kids of their own. So I've known Rabbit. So the first time I went there on the Lure Lane, before I left, this was before Hobie was in business, and there were no surfboard makers around here. I mean, a couple of guys make a board on the beach for you if you knew them and stuff. But Matt Kivlin and Joe Quigg were known hot guys, and I went to Santa Barbara to school. So driving from Laguna to Santa Barbara, there was no freeway. You had to go up the Coast Highway. I'd always stop at Malibu, surf, got to know Joe Quigg and Matt Kivlin and Dave Rockland and Tommy Zahn and all those guys on the beach. It would usually take me about 2 days to drive to Santa Barbara because I'd surf along the way and spend the night with those guys. So before I went on the lure lane, I called Matt Kivlin to see if he'd make a board for me. He said, sure. He had no shop, no garage. I said, where are you going to make it? And there was a neat bar about a block inland from Santa Monica or Malibu. And he said, I'll make it in back of the Sip and Surf. And the Sip and Surf was a keen bar that we used to always drink at. So I used to go up, and it would take him a month to make it. You know, he wouldn't work on it every day, all day long. Shape a little bit, and then he'd get the fiberglass, and it was under a tree, and I was laughing. He was glassing it under this tree in back of the Sip and Surf bar. But it was a beautiful wooden board, and in those days, it was a state-of-the-art, a Malibu chip. By then, we had fiberglass, had an 8-inch deep fin. Before that, the fins were so shallow you couldn't really turn with them. And so I took it on the lure lane and took it to Honolulu with me. And in those days, they, meaning the Hawaiian guys, were still riding hot curls. They didn't have access to the balsa wood. See, there was so limited amount of balsa wood, it was all sold to 𝐬 and Hobie. When they started buying it, they didn't want to send any to Hawaii. And fiberglass was new. So as soon as I got over there, I'm on the beach, and I've lived in a Quonset hut with Buzzy Trent, Walter, Flippy Hoffman, and I during the winter would surf Makaha. There was not many guys who were surfing in those days. I have pictures of me at Makaha on 8 or 10 foot day. I'm the only one out.
Crazy. By
myself.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just the way it was then. Buffalo lived there. He was still in high school. And, you know, Walter was in the Navy, and so he had to go to work every day. I'd already been in the service. I was older than Walter, so I got out sooner during the Korean War, and I had the GI Bill, so I'm getting $26 a week, which I could live like a king on in the Quonset hut, and we're making beer in the bathtub, so we didn't buy much of anything. But anyway, that's where I got to know Rabbit and Steamboat and all those beach guys. And so I let them use my board. Well, that to them, you know, they have such a loving, caring relationship with people if they like them. Now, there's obvious ones that they don't like, and that's a different ballgame. But right away, you know, there weren't many haoles. We were a rare breed in those days over there. And we were friendly, and they were friendly, and we didn't cause them any problems. And I've been to a party with Rabbit's older brother was named Jama, and we'd go to parties, all Hawaiians, and I'd be like the only haole guy there, and there'd always be some drunk Hawaiian or something that would say, hey, haole boy, you know, and they'd start pushing you around, and Rabbit came to my defense every time, and Jama in particular. He was way bigger than Rabbit, and he'd say, hey, this is my brother, he's a good guy, and that was it. There was never any, I'd never gotten any hassles. Maybe a talking hassle before Jama or Rabbit kind of saved you. Yeah. But they just they knew that you're a friend of whomever, then you're a good guy. And so I let them use my board. And when I finally left on the lure lane, 6-8 months after I'd been there most of the winter and that summer, they all came down. Of course, in those days, there was not the security that there is now. So the lure lanes down to Aloha Tower getting ready to leave, they all come aboard. I mean, all the beach guys. There must have been 20 of them. And they all come down, and they've got beer, and we're back on the fantail drinking, and they're having a good time. And I gave them my surfboard, my Matt Kivlin board, just handed it over to them. You guys keep it. I'm going to mainland. I'll get another one. Well, that was a brotherly thing to do in their mind. And so on the fantail of the lure lane, they gave me an outrigger canoe paddle. I gave them the surfboard. They give me the paddle. This brother, we become brothers, lifetime brothers. You know, they really get emotional about this stuff. And it really was emotional for me. And during that 2, maybe 3 hour party is when 𝐸 came up on the gangplank and brought my trunks. And so here I had all the Hawaiians giving me presenting them. They're hugging me, and you, my brother, forever. And you are giving me lays, which when the Hawaiian gives you a lay, it means you're going to come back to Hawaii and see them again. Of course, I did live there for 30 years and spent a lot of time with them. So we really became good friends. And Rockland, I was good friends with him, and because of Rabbit's daughters, I knew them real well. So it just all made sense somehow.
Yeah.
Well, and the last part of that, so they blow the big horn and everything. The Lurline's leaving. Everybody ashore that's a tourist and everything, and none of the Hawaiians left. Did I tell you this part?
Yeah, but go on.
So we're on the Lurline, and the tugboats are pulling us through the harbor, and we get out right off Diamond Head, or not right off Waikiki, and I said, God, what are you guys going to do? No problem, brother. And here comes 2 outrigger canoes, and all those 20, whatever there were, of them, Beach Boys, jumped off the Lurline into the water, picked up by the outriggers, and they're throwing lays, and it was so emotional. I was crying, almost crying now just thinking about it. It was really emotional and a great feeling, and Rabbit and I were friends the rest of his life.
Yeah, he's a name that you hear referenced all the time, and it's always glowingly. People just have nothing but positive things to say about him.
Well, he was a real friendly, good guy, know, and just his mannerisms, and he wanted everybody to know the Hawaiian traditions and culture and the love of people, and he really showed that.
Was Rabbit a nickname?
Yeah.
Would you know what his real name was? Or where he even got the name Rabbit?
Well, I don't remember how I got it. I was sure I was told at one point.
Yeah.
But it was a last name beginning with a K. A lot of them did, but I can't remember it. Well, it's Kekai, Rabbit Kekai.
Right, but what would the first
name? But a first name I don't know.
One of the things that people mentioned after we did our last series of episodes was just that a movie needs to be made about you. And now we have a movie that's actually made about you. This is The Birth of the Endless Summer. How did that go for you, and what did you think of the final product?
Well, it was certainly fun making it. Richard Yalen, the producer, did some homework. I don't know where he found out about it, but that I had been in Africa and been at Cape St. Francis, and J Bay got Bruce to go make The Endless Summer. So he heard that story, called me up one day, and we had lunch, and I told him I'd been back to Africa by then, I don't know, 7, 8 times. Well, maybe more than that, 10 times, because I've been there 12 times in total. And so I told him, I went down there, and the Whitmores and Patty and his daughter and all the stuff. And I was just fascinated with Africa, the animals, the tribes, everything about it just captured me. I read a lot, and I read a lot before that, but to learn about Asia and Africa and India and all these other countries, but Africa so dominated my mentality. And once I got there and seeing how spectacular it was, I thought I was going to live there forever.
Really?
Well, with Patty, I certainly had the opportunity to, and John Whitmore and his wife Thelma wanted me to help them make surfboards, and I could have easily stayed there, but we didn't have the materials, and I didn't know where to get them then, because resin was just being developed in California. Because when I got back, it was 61. Grubby had figured out the foam, and so I sent a container of blanks from Grubby and resin and fiberglass to John Whitmore. That was in 61 or maybe early 62, I can't remember when. And then it took 6 months for it to get there.
Right.
So then I flew back to Cape Town in 62 or 3 and showed, because John didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And so by then he'd gotten the container and he waited for me to get there. So then we started making surfboards. He quit selling used cars and, started making surfboards and did a great job. So my whole life, I've taken my mother there twice. I've taken my wife there twice. So our relationship is way more than just a couple of weekends or on a tour safari or something. I was there months at a time. I know my way around Cape Town and Camps Bay and Sea Point and all these little towns. And then even in Africa or in the Kenya, the animal part of Africa, I've been there a lot, and I rented a Volkswagen and fixed it so I could sleep in it. And I went out by myself in the Serengeti. So I worked for a safari company. I spent a lot of time there. So to me, Africa is a very special place. So when Richard Yalen heard the story and wanted to take me back, I was most enthusiastic to go back and see. Of course, John Whitmore had died, but all the other people that I knew, his daughters, Petta and Shelley and Patty and all of them. So that was a great time and a great honor. And I think Richard did a good job with it. It came out, it's only about a 6 months period of my whole trip. It wasn't really about the trip itself. It was the time from Victoria Falls to the time I got to South Africa, and that was really it. There's so much more to tell about that trip and that was a special part of it. But I thought the movie came out real well, and I've enjoyed going to the premieres and talking to people and the questions they have. It's funny how some people are hesitant to ask questions, but once somebody starts asking them, then they all kind of jump in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of interesting questions that come up.
Did you ever get a chance to take it back to Cape Town to premiere?
Well, it showed in Cape Town.
Okay.
But I didn't get to go back then.
Got it.
They sent it back, and Miles Masterson, who helped us, he took us all around when we were making the movie. So they showed it, and it was sold out for days. And, they thought it was great. So all my friends saw it and wrote me and said how great it was.
I haven't seen it in years, but I remember liking it a lot and being, I had already had a relationship with you and recorded all these episodes, so I kind of knew what to expect, but I thought he did a fantastic job with it. But it's impossible to tell your comprehensive story. You would need a documentary series, you know what I mean?
Well, that's true. That whole trip was so special, and I think people call me all the time about doing a book or a movie or something, and I don't want to do one, but I think one should be done because first off, there's nobody left that was all those places that I was, of that group of early surfers, really are the involved ones. Rennie Yater and Grubby are about the only two other ones that were there at that time. And they're both really good friends. I talked to Rennie yesterday. We talk all the time on the phone. So because I just was a luck out. It wasn't like I was so brilliant or anything, but I grew up in Laguna with Hevs and Peanuts. They taught me how to surf. I got involved with Hobie right away. I lived in Hawaii for 30 years, knew all the rabbits and all the beach guys, did the Africa thing, been back to Africa 12 times. Just the whole surf culture, the way it changed, being involved with Surfline, OP, all this stuff, all these years. Really, I was the only one that was really there and kind of remembers all of it, at least pretty well, not in total. But it does seem like something ought to happen, but I'm not going to make it happen.
Well, one version of it happening is the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center. So can you give us what was the impetus for that and why is it important and what is it now? Well,
certainly that was 25 years ago. So when I sold the Hobie stores in Hawaii, I had collected so many boards from Hawaii. As you know, I surfed with Duke and knew Duke pretty well and have several of his boards. So I had all this stuff in the Hobie shops in Maui, and when I sold them the first time, I didn't want to sell the boards, so I brought them all over here and talked to my three people that influenced me the most, I guess, 4 people maybe, were Steve Pesman, Bill Blackburn, Hobie, and Bruce Brown. And talking to them, they kept saying, well, you're the perfect guy. You've done this and did that. You've got all the surfboards. We really need a real historic museum about not only the boards, but how all this happened. The whole surf industry started at nothing and grew to what it is today. And I was there kind of every step along the way. So at first I went to Huntington Beach, and I went to Oceanside, I went to Santa Cruz. Those are the 3 existing surf museums in California. Talked to all the guys, and they all are doing a reasonably good job. They all mean well, but they didn't, in Huntington Beach, it was started by Natalie and the other gal's name, I can't remember now, but they were 2 women that were real estate agents in Huntington Beach, and they grew up in Kansas. They'd never surfed, but they thought it was a really fun thing to watch. So they gave it their all, and they started it, and they did, their heart was in the right place, but they didn't have the connections and didn't have the stuff. I mean, I had all this stuff that I just collected, and Oceanside the same way. They were on the Coast Highway and had a little bitty store, and now they have a bigger spot, which is a lot better, certainly. But they don't have historic boards. Every board that I collected, I know who owned it, who made it, where it was made, the history of that board that tells a story. And to me, that's what's important, is to register and keep this history of the industry. I mean, it changed not only my life, the surf industry, it changed the world's culture to some degree. I mean, the music, the clothes, the food, everything about surfing in the 60s and 70s, it impacted. I mean, you go to Germany or you go back to Africa today, and guys are wearing a Hang 10 old shirt or an OP pair of shorts or something. They live that, and we started that right here in Orange County primarily. I mean, Hawaii had a lot to do with it as well, but I think it's really important to not let that disappear. So to me, not having any more wives and kids, doing the museum was the logical next step for me. And I have, started in 1999 and have been on the board and overseen it for the last 25 years. And now, as you may or may not know, the board, it started out, I appointed 3 guys, Steve Pesman, Bill Blackburn, and Bob Mardian as the 3 board members. And we met only once a year at the Wind and Sea and had a couple of beers. And Blackburn would write down the minutes that I would tell him what I had done the past year, what I planned to do the next year. And we'd have a couple of beers, and that was it. And so for those years, and then later on, I met Spencer Crowell at a surfboard auction. I couldn't believe, I never paid, well, I did pay later on, but early on, pay for any surfboards. And here I went to the first auction, and guys were paying $1,000 for a surfboard. I was in shock. So I went up and tapped this guy in the back. I said, "Who are you? Are you buying surfboard?" And it was Spencer Crowell. So we got to be good friends, and he was instrumental in helping us get the building that we now have. I paid it off, so we have no debt on that building. And I had boards from, the 20s to the 70s. When the shortboard revolution kind of started, I kind of lost interest in collecting. But Spencer had some old boards as well, but he had a lot of so our collections together really made the whole spectrum. So he's been a big help in furthering the collection. And so our board, so many of them, partly because of COVID, we didn't follow through with some of our intended rules. And so over a period of time, I've been working on this for the last 3 or 4 years. I didn't want to be, it shouldn't be on the board anymore. I mean, we need new, young, vital guys. So I tried to get Paul Nadet and Randy Hild and young guys that have been in the industry, but they didn't want to come on the board and be fighting the old board. So basically, the old board of about 12 of us, 11 of us, we've gone to an advisory board, and the whole new guys, so there's 7 new board members: Jeff Alder, Hobie's son, Paul Nadet, Randy Hild, Royce Counselor, Don McInerney owns the 𝐒𝐿 Shoes and Sandals, and there's one other one. Oh, Greg McGillery. movie fame.
That's right. Yeah.
So they're and in order to go to Laguna, which we're hoping to do, the majority of the board has to live in Laguna. They've had some difficult things with the Festival of Arts and the Arts Museum, where out-of-town people got on the board and tried to move it away. So to be in Laguna, you have to have majority, not all, Laguna residences. So Mark Christie too is the other one. So Mark Christie, Paul, all those McGillivray, they all live in Laguna, and they're all smart. They've all been successful. They've got a lot of energy, and they've got connections in the industry altogether, untold amount of years spent. So I think it's a great move forward, and I'm looking forward to giving them any input they want. But I think they can take, it's a relay race, a long relay race to me. We started it, we got it going to where it is, got it where it is. It's the biggest, most complete surf museum in the world by far. So now we hand off the baton to this group, and they're going to go for X amount of years, and then they're going to hand it off to a new group. So it's a plan, and I've donated money for an endowment. So my hopes and prayers are that it'll last in perpetuity and carry the whole surf history and the dialogues you and I have had, along with other ones, to be preserved in history for the public at large.
So it started with a surfboard collection, but now it obviously has media, it has magazines, it has photography. What, for anybody listening who maybe wants to get involved, where do you see as the gaps for the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center, what you wanted it to be versus what it's kind of currently doing, and where can people fill those gaps? What's missing?
Well, there's a million gaps that need to be filled. Certainly the board can't do it all. I mean, they obviously have other jobs that they're involved in, but they can be the leaders. But there's so many things, like tomorrow, I'm going to go down and I give tours at the museum, but I can't go there every day, and there are not other guys available to be able to give tours. So the technological advances that have been made, so you're going to be able, once I do this, which is going to start tomorrow, you can take your phone and, I don't know all the terms, but you can get that little, not a website, but
so when you go to a museum nowadays, like the Louvre or whatever,
right,
you have a headset and you walk up to the painting and there's a number or a QR code and you scan that and a voice comes on your headset and educates you about the painting.
Well, that's my understanding what we're doing. So I'm going to be then, they can hook up with their phone and listen to it on their phone about each board that I will tell a story about. So we not only have to do that with the boards, but we need to do that. So as you said, that we have the library, we have every magazine, every book that's ever been published on surfing. That all has got to get on the computer so the public has access to that. So there's a untold amount of work that needs to be done, gaps that need to be filled on magazines and books and all the history that we've collected, but not yet condensed so it's real easy to get at.
Well, so much of it is in your head,
well, that's
and
true.
That's why it's smart to do what you're going to do tomorrow, because to have it in your voice is incredible. That's a great thing that we need to take advantage of. Your problem is going to be keeping it condensed and concise.
Well, actually,
you know what I mean?
They told me the other day when they had told me we're going to start on Tuesday, there's going to be two types. There's going to be one that will make a quick tour.
Okay.
That would be just a quick little input and to stop me from talking too much. And then on special boards, we'll go back and tell a story.
That's smart.
So I think that makes sense, because I get so passionate about it, and I was there. I know so much. It's not like just a couple of lines. I know the guy that shaped it and made it and where he was, and we had beer together, and we double dated, and we did this and that. And
it's important to get the long form version too.
Sure.
So I'm glad they're doing that.
We're going to do both.
Good. How many surfboards are in inventory? Do you know?
No, but I know it's over 850.
Crazy.
But they're not all what happened. I'll give you one quick example. Bev Morgan, who used to be the editor of Surfer Magazine and a good photographer, and he was started wetsuits too. Good friend, lived in Santa Barbara, and he had a balsa gun made by Pat Kern that I felt was really historical and should be in the museum. So I called Bev up, and he said, sure, come on up and get it, and I'll tell you all I know about it. And I got a bunch of pictures. So I did, and he said, well, while you're here, I had my van. He said, I've got these 3 other surfboards. I don't want them anymore. You got to get them out of here. So some of these boards I was coerced into taking that really don't have history, but I hate to just give them away and sell them.
Totally.
You know, these were from Bev, and one of them had a thing for a camera on it and that kind of thing. So, but it isn't really historical in the true sense of the word. So we've got to pare those down. And the 150 that we have on display, that changes to some degree, but there's probably 300 that could be on there at any time. So, you know, I think I talked to the mayor of Honolulu quite a bit. They don't have a museum. And since I lived in Hawaii and have as much Hawaii history in this museum as we do California almost, Duke's boards and pictures and all that, you know, I hope there's a museum in Honolulu at some point. I think there could be more than the ones that are in California. I think there's a way to make it a lot cheaper that if we acted as the warehouse for these, and when we do a show and Barry does the signage and we gather stuff to do a show on trunks or whatever it might be, that we could just as soon have that at 3 other museums, and it wouldn't cost anything to do that. Right. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that I think will eventually evolve. We could have a museum, you know, in Laguna and another one in San Diego or something, and move stuff around. So it's constantly changing.
The only limitation for that and seeing the full or implementing the entire vision is resources and number of people to allocate towards those roles. So how many employees do you have? And then how is it funded? Well,
right now there's 4 employees, Barry, Linda, Kate, and the archivist. Then Jeff Alter is going to be the executive director. So he's going to move into that role. So there's really going to be 5 employees. That's funded by our activities. You know, whenever we put on a show, if you're a member, you get to come in at a lower price. So maybe it's $5 for a member and it's $15 for somebody else. So, you know, we do fundraisers all the time that hopefully will carry that load. We don't have to pay rent because we own the building. I've already started an endowment that is going to spin off some money. So I want that endowment to grow, which it will. You know, I've got promises from older people that I want to donate to that. So I think the other thing that's amazing, but we haven't promoted that very well, we've done weddings and funerals in that location.
I didn't know that.
And so we have to promote that because especially weddings or private parties, you know, guys that are into cars, they go to a car museum and have a open party. Well, certainly we've done that. We haven't done it as much as we could, but there's a lot of corporations that we could go to, appeal to them to rent it for, you know, a couple grand a day to have a party or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of possibilities.
There really are. I mean, when I walk through there, I see endless opportunities to exploit, you know, or just that I know through our listenership, people want information or the stories or whatever. And there's no way to communicate those stories to them. Like the museum's here, go to the museum, but you might not live nearby or whatever. Right. So the audience is there for it.
Well, then to do a museum, a video museum, is certainly on the top of our list too.
When you said Laguna, does that mean there would be a second location or you'd be moving the museum?
Well, you know, we've talked for years about Dana Point Harbor, and the harbor, because of COVID, got delayed and one thing and another. Laguna would like to have next to the festival, across the street from the festival where the parking lot is now, that is owned by Laguna, and they intend to build a parking structure that will kind of go against the hills there. So it won't be sticking up in the middle of the town. It'll be against the hills, and they would like to build. See, we have 10,000 feet where we are now, which includes about 5,000 for showing the surfboards and having an event. The other 5,000 is the library, the archiving, the offices, the storage, all that other stuff. So in my mind, you could do kind of a mini museum. It's a museum only with a gift store.
Right, just a showroom.
Just showroom.
Yeah.
And then the existing building that we own, we do all the other stuff, the archiving, the library, and the research, and that would all continue there.
Got it. That makes perfect sense.
So I think that's our trajectory. It's just a matter of getting the money and the manpower to move forward, and it doesn't move as fast as you hope, but it is moving.
Good. Yeah, that's great. And it makes a lot of sense because so much of what the museum has to offer is not on display currently.
Yeah,
I would say 10% of it is on display.
Oh,
maybe.
yeah, nothing compared to what we have.
So,
and that needs to be on a website. It needs to be a virtual museum, access to that. I mean, the other day, well, I say that a month or so ago, I was getting a taco somewhere in Dana Point, and this couple, I was talking to somebody about surfing, and they asked me, they'd just come out from North Carolina and brought their son, who was a surfer there, out to California. They wanted to go to the Trestle and Salt Creek and see all the spots. And I invited them to come to the museum, too, of course, which they did.
Good.
And since then, they've brought, this was originally a year or so ago. Since then, they've come out twice and brought other friends of theirs from the East Coast with them, and I've given them tours. And so it just shows the interest and the demand for that once we get it better organized.
Totally.
It just needs to be done. Yeah. And I think the new board is certainly aware of all that and are headed in that direction.
Phenomenal. You've done a phenomenal job with it thus far. So.
Well, I'm proud of it, and I certainly want to see it continue on in perpetuity. Yeah. So I appreciate your help and all the things that you've done, because each one of those is just a little tidbit of history.
Completely, yeah. In closing, listeners are going to want to know how you're doing physically and how old are you at this point?
You know, I used to lie about my age because I was always with girls that were considerably younger. So I always knocked off 20 years. I am 95 now. So I say I'm 75. But since the movie came out, it did tell me that the movie was made when I was 92. So one girlfriend that I'd been going with for 6 months went to the movie, and she said, I just can't go with somebody that's 93 at the time. I said, why not? We've been going together for 6 or 8 months. And she said, but my girlfriends think I'm going with some decrepit old guy. And I said, well, I'm still moving, so give me a second shot. So anyway, it's
better than a lot of 75-year-olds, by the way. You're moving better than them.
Well, I'm lucky that I've been healthy. I work out. I try to stay healthy. Still ride motorcycles. I surf a little bit, but I can't get up quick enough. Yeah. My knees have been operated on so many times, the getting up. But if I do stand up, I'm okay. But I can only do that in littler waves. And skiing I can still do, but I have neuropathy, and I can't feel the edges of my skis. So instead of carving a turn now, I'm kind of sliding a turn. Yeah. And, you know, when you do something fairly good all your life, when you drop down, it's not as much fun. Right. So anyway, I'm still moving.
Are you still splitting your time between Ketchum and Southern California?
I do spend a lot of time in the summers in Ketchum. I used to ski 100 days a year, which I don't anymore. So I'll be here in the wintertime and Ketchum in the summer where I can still ride my motorcycle.
I love that you're still riding the motorcycle. I mean, the biggest threat there is falling, obviously.
Well,
right?
you know, I ride in the dirt, not in the street. I have a KTM 500cc bike. So you're going to fall down, but you don't kill yourself. Usually you just ding yourself up a little bit. And I've got enough scars already to show my over enthusiasm. I tend to, when you've been riding as long as I have, you ride too fast. And if there's two motorcycles, you're going to have a race whether you want one or not.
But I don't know of a lot of 95-year-olds who can even take a fall without, getting seriously injured.
Well, it's true. I'm used to falling, and I wear, chest protector and helmet and stuff, but you go over the handlebars. But I ride now in places that I've ridden a lot, and I know the trails pretty well. So I didn't fall down at all this summer, so I'm ahead of the game.
Good for you, man. That is ahead of the game. Are you spending any time in Hawaii at this point?
And not as much as I'd like to. I mean, I love Hawaii, but it's gotten like so many places crowded. God, it's just the crowds in Oahu, to drive to the North Shore. It's just such an effort. And, you at this age, I've lost so many of my friends. I go back to Hawaii, and there's no Rabbit, and there's no Rocklands, and Joe Quiggs and Matt Kivlins, and they're all gone. And that makes, what I've discovered is getting older isn't necessarily fun, but it's not bad either if you keep moving. But your friends, you don't have the people to play with. And, you used to go to Beach Road, and Walter and Flippy and Wayne Schaefer and Hobie and everywhere, all there. And over the years, there's no more Beach Road. Wayne sold his house, Walter died, and we're having that's next Friday, or this Friday, coming Friday, is Walter Hoffman's paddle out at Doheny. So it's just, it's the way life is. It gets more lonely. And I'm energetic. I want to be involved, and everybody tends to think you should be out to pasture some way, and I'm not ready for that yet.
Clearly not. Yeah. The final thing I wanted to communicate to you was I remember, or when I listened back to some of our previous conversations, a theme that kept coming up for you was talking about all these stories. You were just trying to have fun. You and your friends, you would constantly say like, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about, even though these were businesses, it wasn't about making money. It was just we were trying to have fun. And I loved hearing that. And I think it's something that we don't get to do as often today. Certainly if you live in a beach community, it's crazy expensive. And you're just kind of obligated to work long hours in order to support the lifestyle. And so fun has, of course, we're surfing to have fun, but it's more the release valve now, compared to back then when I think you could live a lifestyle on the beach on, very little money, basically.
Well, you could, and we did. That was the whole thing. We determined that we just wanted to live this life, but unfortunately it didn't go on. The economy and my first house my dad built in Laguna was $6,000. And now, I don't know, it's a couple million, I suppose.
For sure.
I mean, it's just down from the high school. So all of that has changed. And obviously a lot of them are making more money than they ever thought they would make, and they can stay here, but it's difficult. But you can still do it. I still do it with knowing the right people and knowing how to, I grew up in the Depression, so you learn right from the beginning that there are ways to get around certain costs and stuff. So, you don't go to the expensive restaurants. I just don't. I'd rather have the food that's at a lesser restaurant. I go to Turk's down at Dana Point Harbor, and I eat in Laguna a lot, but so many of them have gotten way expensive, so you can't afford to go there on a nightly basis. So it changes your routine. There's no question about it, but it is what it is. And, we have to just kind of work around it to get that beach time, which is still so important.
I think so much of your success, though, is related to chasing the fun instead of chasing the, capital interest.
Well, the dollars came kind of unexpectedly.
Right.
We never seeked them out. I mean, I guess there was parts of some of the people that did more than others, but it was never about It was how we could have more fun.
Right.
And it was just being together as a group of friends that liked each other, liked to be together, liked to play together, liked to talk about world events and geography, but all that was fun to us. And to get food out of the ocean, which didn't cost anything, to get horse meat out of the feed and fuel store instead of a top sirloin that tastes just the same to me. I mean, horse meat cost 27 cents a pound, and we'd tell the girls we're having top sirloins and lobster tonight, and the lobsters we got from the ocean, the top sirloins from the pet store, and there's still ways you can do that. But you have to be careful. You can't just walk in and pay the top dollar at every place. You just don't earn that much money, and the taxes have gone up and all the other expenses. So yeah, you gotta weave your way through this little area that makes you survive in a way that you can survive in the way you want to live. So, I'm barefooted and in a pair of shorts every day. That's, to me, is comfortable.
The pursuit of fun, I think, has helped keep you young too.
I think
you can
absolutely.
Attribute your 95 years to that.
Yeah, you're still having fun. I call up my friends and what are we going to do today? Let's go do something that's exciting. And young girls help that to be exciting because when there's a certain point where they don't feel as relaxed, like younger girls will get their hair wet, they get sand in their hair, they don't care. But when they get a certain age, 50, 60, whatever it is, then all of a sudden they don't want to lay in the sand. They want to have a nice chair on the beach and an umbrella, and nobody wants to carry all that to the beach. So, it just has a different mentality.
Yeah. Well, you're an inspiration. Thanks for sharing all your stories.
Well, David, I appreciate all you're doing. Thank you so much. And we'll keep all these copies and have them for perpetuity as well.
Good. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Surf Splendor.